Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hopefully, you guys are having a great day. Got lots of NHL news to discuss, so make sure you stay tuned in to the end of the episode. But before we get started, just want to let you guys know, make sure you hit that follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on the latest NHL news, teams, players, stats, and all that other good stuff that I deliver on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. We're with you guys for every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started into the NHL news for the day. So Arturi Lehkonen, he scores the game-winning goal with 15 seconds left in the third period as the Avs win 5-4 against the New York Rangers Sunday. And Colorado moves to 29-20-2 of the season, and they sweep the season series against the Rangers. They won 3-2 in overtime against them back at home on January 14th. And 12 days later, they get it done at MSG to sweep the season series. Cale Makar had a big night for the Avs. He had 2 goals and 1 assist for a 3-point night, and Jack Drury scored his first goal with the Colorado Avalanche since being acquired in that 3-way trade with the Carolina Hurricanes and Chicago Blackhawks that sent Mikko Rantanen to the Carolina Hurricanes, which I'll get more into depth about that later on in this episode. Juuso Parsons also scored for the Avalanche, while Mackenzie Blackwood made 33 saves on 37 shots faced in net. And for the Rangers side, Vincent Trocheck and Artemi Panarin both had a goal and assist for a 2-point night. Sam Carrick and Will Borgen also scored. Of course, Will Borgen signed a 5-year contract with the New York Rangers. I think it was this past weekend that happened. And Igor Shesterkin made 16 saves, and the Rangers' 10-game point streak comes to an end. They're 7-0-3 during the span, and they're 24-21-4 of the season. They came back down from 2 goals twice in this game. They were down 2-0. They tied it up at 2. They were down 4-2, and they tied it up at 4, and they still couldn't get the job done. And you would think with the way that the Rangers have been playing of lately, obviously they had during the midseason, it was like kind of terrible, but they turned it around in 2025. So you would think the way that they played, this will probably go into overtime or possibly a shootout, but that doesn't happen. Of course, the Rangers won the power play in that final seconds of the third period. Cale Makar comes out of the box, and it's like, a 2-on-1 back the other way, and Arturi Lehkonen with a one-timer into the back net past Igor Shesterkin. The Avs win the game against the Rangers 5-4. But the Rangers, they conclude their 4-game homestand against the Carolina Hurricanes Tuesday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. So far, they're 2-1-0 during the 4-game homestand. They had a 5-0 shutout win over the Senators last Tuesday and a 6-1 win over the Flyers Thursday. And then, of course, losing 5-4 to the Avalanche. But for Colorado, they conclude their 3-game road trip against the Islanders Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. That game will be on Hulu and ESPN Plus for you guys to watch. Moving on to Utah and Ottawa game, in the Ottawa game from yesterday. So Claude Giroux, he scores the game-winning goal in the Senators' 3-1 win against Utah Hockey Club. He also had an assist for a 2-point night, and Ottawa moves to 26-20-4 of the season. They're third place in the Atlantic Division. They won 2 in a row. And they're tied with the Boston Bruins with 56 points. And believe it or not, this is the first time that Ottawa has been in the top 3 spot in the division since the 2016-17 season. Of course, they were in the playoffs then. They went all the way to the Eastern Conference Final before losing to the Pittsburgh Penguins in 7 games. And Riley Gregg and Brady Tkachuk scored for Ottawa, while Levi Merrill made 34 saves in the game. Clayton Keller, he had a goal to extend his point streak to 7 games for Utah. He has 13 points during the span, 4 goals, 9 assists for 13 points during that 7-game point streak. And Carl Vejmelka made 24 saves in the loss, which, of course, Utah has lost 2 straight games. They lost 5-2 to the Winnipeg Jets on Friday, and then they lost 3-1 to the Senators yesterday. And they're 21-21-7 of the season, so they're right at 500. And Utah will return home to start a 4-game homestand against the Pittsburgh Penguins Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. I think that game will be on TNT. I think. I'm not 100% sure. But the Senators, they continue their 4-game homestand against the Capitals Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. All right, now it's time to discuss the 3-way trade that happened Friday between the Carolina Hurricanes, Colorado Avalanche, and my Chicago Blackhawks. So, of course, this part of the podcast I will put out on the TG Hockey channel so you guys can be able to see it and hear my thoughts on it. But as for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and get right into the discussion. So, of course, Carolina, they got Taylor Hall from the Chicago Blackhawks. They got Mikko Rantanen from the Colorado Avalanche. And for the Avalanche, they got Martin Necas from Carolina, Jack Drury from Carolina. And they got a 2025 second-round pick and a 2025 fourth-round pick. And for the Blackhawks, they got their 2025 third-round pick back from Carolina. And they retained 50% of Mikko Rantanen's salary during that trade. And obviously, fans did not like what the Chicago Blackhawks have gotten back in the trade. I didn't like what we got back in the trade because obviously we got a third-round pick back. I thought we could have gotten another solid player to go with the pick. Probably could have made it more of a trade than just getting our third-round pick back. But Martin Necas and Jack Drury made their Colorado Avalanche debut Saturday in their 3-1 loss to the Boston Bruins. Of course, Martin Necas was playing first-line wing. He had a career high of 25 minutes and 8 seconds of time on ice. He was out there for 23 shifts, 2 shots on goal, and a -3 plus-minus. Jack Drury, he's playing third-line center for the Avs. Played 15 minutes and 4 seconds of time on ice in his Colorado Avalanche debut. He has 17 shifts, no shots on goal, and a -1 plus-minus. So my takeaways from the debut, of course, I felt like it was like a solid, despite the loss, I thought it was like a solid debut for Martin Necas and Jack Drury. And, of course, the Avalanche had only 1 goal in the loss, so they kind of struggled offensively in that game alone. But throughout the season, hasn't been a problem since they're one of the top teams to watch. Well, they're in the wild card spot as of right now, but I still see them as one of the top teams despite losing Mikko Rantanen. And another takeaway, I believe with getting Martin Necas and Jack Drury, it's going to take time to develop that chemistry. I mean, it just doesn't happen right away. I mean, when the Avalanche drafted Gabriel Landeskog, which who knows when he's going to return because he's been out since Game 6 of the 2022 Stanley Cup Final when the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. And that's how long he's been out for. And they drafted Nathan McKinnon. They got Cale Makar. They got Mikko Rantanen. And, of course, the Avalanche, they were struggling during that time. And I think in 2017, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they finished last in the league. And so it took some time to, develop that core between Gabriel Landeskog, Nathan McKinnon, and Mikko Rantanen, then getting Cale Makar. And then 5 years later, they win the Stanley Cup in 2022. So it just takes time. It just doesn't happen right away. I mean, of course, we knew Cale Makar at the time in the 2017 NHL draft because I think that's when he was drafted by Colorado. Correct me if I'm wrong. We knew he was a good prospect then, but we just didn't see how he was going to do good in the NHL. So it just takes time to develop that chemistry. It just takes time to develop that core, and that's what it's going to go for Martin Necas and Jack Drury. It's going to take some time to develop their presence for the Colorado Avalanche. And of course, I did broke down this article, or this trade, I should say, excuse me if I'm getting my words mixed up. I did break down this trade on Blackhawk Up, so you can check it out on their Fansided's Blackhawk Up page where I discussed the Taylor Hall 3-way trade that happened on Friday. If you want more in-depth analysis on there. I'm going to try and say a little bit what I said on my article on here. I don't want to give too much away because I want you guys to check out that article on Fansided's Blackhawk Up page. But for the Carolina Hurricanes, Taylor Hall, Mikko Rantanen, they made their Carolina debut Saturday in a 3-2 overtime loss to New York Islanders. Of course, Taylor Hall is playing fourth line winger, which kind of makes sense because he needs some help on the bottom six right there. And we're just not seeing the same Taylor Hall that we saw when he was on the New Jersey Devils and when he won the Hart Memorial Trophy back in 2018. But in his Carolina Hurricanes debut, he had 11 minutes and 36 seconds of time on ice, 16 shifts, no shots on goal, and a 0 plus minus. And for Mikko Rantanen, as we all expected and anticipated, he was playing first line winger, had 18 minutes and 54 seconds of time on ice, 23 shifts, 5 shots on goal, and a +1 plus minus in the game. Takeaways from the debut, of course, Mikko Rantanen, he's going to be creating some great chemistry with Sebastian Aho. And for the Carolina Hurricanes, of course, these two teams played with each other in the World Juniors. They'll be playing with each other in the Four Nations face-off coming up next in February. And that first line with Mikko Rantanen, Sebastian Aho, it's going to be absolutely buzzing. It's going to be lighting the lamp most of the night. Probably not every single night, but probably most of the night. So that first line, there's no way you can overcome that first line. They probably have like one of the best first lines in the league with the addition of Mikko Rantanen. And of course, Taylor Hall, he's going to be playing on that fourth line, which will help with the bottom six, like I just mentioned, and will also help with that core right there. And he also brings a veteran presence for the Carolina Hurricanes. And despite Taylor Hall, Mikko Rantanen's debut, of course, they lose 3-2 in overtime. And Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall did not have a point in that game. So no goals, no assists for either Mikko Rantanen or Taylor Hall. And for the offense, I believe the Hurricanes, with those two additions, they probably have one of the best offense, or probably one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in the league with the additions of Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall. But let me know you guys' thoughts on that. I always like to hear from you. I didn't want to give you too much because I wanted you guys to go check out my article on Fansided's Blackhawk Up page because I broke it all, the in-depth analysis down on there. So I tried to say a short detail, not too much, so you guys can go check out that article. But for my thoughts overall on the trade, not just on Rantanen and Hall's debut with the Hurricanes and the Natchez and Jersey debut with the Avalanche, my overall thoughts on that trade as a Chicago Blackhawks fan, I was not happy with what we got back. I mean, I believe we could have gotten more than just a third-round pick back in that trade. And then what else? I knew Taylor Hall's time with the Chicago Blackhawks was coming to an end. I mean, it was clear from start to finish. Like, I knew his time with the Blackhawks was going to come to an end. I knew he wasn't going to be around for that rebuild. And I knew eventually, if not at the deadline, he was going to get traded to a playoff contender. And I was right, because Hurricanes are a playoff contender. So I knew at some point he was going to get traded either before or at the deadline. So technically, I kind of really wasn't surprised by the trade of Taylor Hall. Of course, Friday when the Blackhawks took on the Tampa Bay Lightning, which was a 4-3 overtime loss to the Lightning, Taylor Hall was supposed to play in that game. Then Kyle Davidson's like, I'm sorry. You're a late scratch. You're not playing. Pat Maroon or either Philip Kurashev, one of those two was scratch, and then Taylor Hall had to play. When then Kyle Davis was like, you're not playing. So either Maroon or Kurashev will sub in. So, like I said, I really wasn't surprised that he was scratched. I really wasn't surprised that he was going to get traded. I just didn't like what we got back, though. That's just my thoughts on the Blackhawks side of the trade. For the Hurricanes side of the trade, they certainly won the trade, if I'm being honest. If I'm being honest, the Hurricanes have won that trade between the Avalanche and the Blackhawks. They got a veteran goal scorer in Taylor Hall, who's going to be contributing a lot, I believe, for the Hurricanes' bottom six. And then you get a playmaker and an elite player in Mikko Rantanen, who's, I think, before he got traded to the Hurricanes. I think he had 65 points with the Avalanche this season. He's on pace for 100 points this season, and no doubt in mind, he's going to contribute a lot for that top line, playing with his good old buddy Sebastian Aho, and contribute a lot for the Hurricanes offense in general. So I believe the Hurricanes won the trade between the Avalanche and the Blackhawks, and of course themselves. Avalanche, I'm gonna say they're the losers of the. Well, the Blackhawks are most certainly the losers of the trade, but the Avalanche, I don't think they did too good on this trade. I mean, Martin Nature's Jack Drury, like I said before, it's going to take some time to develop the chemistry. Just doesn't come right away. I think maybe give them 2-3 games and they'll start contributing right away. But other than that, I don't think they won that trade. I think the Hurricanes won the trade just because of the reason I just said. But that's my overall thoughts on the trade. Let me know what you guys think about the trade, and that leads me to my next topic. After the three-way massive deal, are the Carolina Hurricanes Cup contenders? That is the big question that everybody is concerned about, and including myself as a Blackhawks fan, because of course we were involved in that trade, so can't leave the Blackhawks out. But the big question is, are the Carolina Hurricanes Stanley Cup contenders? Is this going to be the team that goes all the way to the Stanley Cup final and win the Stanley Cup for the first time since 2006? They're currently 30-16-4 of the season with 64 points of the year. They're second in the Metropolitan Division, fifth in the league, and of course they bolstered their roster with Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall. And, of course, like I told you guys, Mikko Rantanen has 64, 65 points this season, on pace for 100 points. Taylor Hall, he brings that veteran presence for the Hurricanes. He had 24 points in 46 games played with the Blackhawks, so 9 goals, 15 assists for 24 points. In 46 games played with Chicago, he'll do a lot more in Carolina. But I believe the Hurricanes are Stanley Cup contenders. Just take a look at last season. The Hurricanes were 52, 23-7. They had their third straight 50-win season last year. And despite getting bounced in the second round by the New York Rangers last season, with the new additions, they could possibly go all the way to the Stanley Cup final. And they made the playoffs six years in a row. So, of course, in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. And they have a lot of strong playoff experience. You should take a look from 2019, 2024. Went all the way to the Eastern Conference Final before getting swept by the Bruins. And in 2020, lost in the first round to the Bruins, so they didn't really get too much far in that series. And in 2021, they lost in the second round to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who would go on to win the Stanley Cup that year. And then in 2022, they lost in the second round to New York Rangers. 2023 went all the way to Eastern Conference Final before getting swept by the Florida Panthers. And then 2024, like I just mentioned, lost in the second round to New York Rangers. So if you take a look through that time, you can pretty much anticipate the Hurricanes could possibly go to the second round or all the way to the Eastern Conference Final come the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs. So it's either most fans are predicting the second round for the Hurricanes or Eastern Conference Finals based on my perspective of what I just told you guys and what I saw, obviously. I don't think that's going to be the case this season. They're not going to go all the way to the second round just to lose. They're not going to go all the way to Eastern Conference Final and then it's a loss. They're going to go all the way to Stanley Cup Final. I believe they now have the team to go and make a run for the Stanley Cup. And according to one of the betting websites I saw, Hurricanes have a plus 325%. I mean, not percent. They have a plus 325 chance to win the Eastern Conference. That's their odds right there. It could happen with those new additions. I believe it will happen with those new additions. And they have a well-rounded, stacked roster. So no doubt in mind that they'll win the Eastern Conference and they'll win the Stanley Cup this season. And you should take a look at the next set of games heading up to the Four Nations. Of course, they'll play the Rangers tomorrow, And then Thursday, they take on my Chicago Blackhawks. Taylor Hall will be playing against his former team. And then Saturday, they face the LA Kings. And then next Tuesday, they're in Winnipeg to take on the Winnipeg Jets. Next Thursday, they're in the state of hockey, St. Paul, Minnesota, to take on the Minnesota Wild. And then next Saturday, they take on Utah Hockey Club. So if I'm the Carolina Hurricanes, I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, we have a stacked team. I mean, you guys have a stacked team. You guys have all the depth. You probably have one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in the league. You probably have a solid defensive pair, so I wouldn't be too worried. And you guys are a stacked team to watch as well. So just to wrap up, my thoughts on the trade. And if the Hurricanes are going to be Stanley Cup contenders, I believe they will. I see that they'll win the Stanley Cup. They'll be a Stanley Cup contender. They have the depths. They have the lines. They have the defense. And they have a pretty good goaltending in Freddie Anderson and Pierre Kochetkov, which when Freddie Anderson was with the Anaheim Ducks, we saw him take them all the way to the Western Conference Final before losing to my Chicago Blackhawks in 7 games in that 2015 Western Conference Final Series. So no doubt in mind that he's going to do the same thing for the Hurricanes, except only this time he'll lead them to the Stanley Cup Final, and they'll win a Stanley Cup because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a run for the Cup, and I believe that they have the roster to do so. But let me know you guys' thoughts on the trade. Of course, I will be putting this part of the podcast on my TG Hockey channel, so be on the lookout for that. But now we're going to get into the San Jose Sharks rebuild. Of course, they have a lot of injuries. They're currently struggling. They lost 6 straight games. They're 3-9-0 in their last 12 games, and they're 14-32-6 of the season. They're last in the league. And, of course, they have a lot of injuries on their hands. Of course, the team captain, Logan Couture, is out with a lower body injury. Vika Vanacek is out with an upper body injury. Jan Ruda is placed on injured reserves. Nico Sturm is out with a lower body injury. And Kim Costin is out with a lower body injury. So it's a lot of injuries. But we're going to take a look at the development for Macca Celebrini. Of course, he's going to be one of the top rookies in that Calder Trophy race. He has 35 points in 40 games played this season with a -20 plus-minus. So 15 goals, 20 assists for 35 points in 40 games with that -20 plus-minus. So, of course, that's going to need to change right there. And, of course, a while back, General Manager Mike Greer has outlined a development plan for Macca Celebrini, which he's going to emphasize on the load management and based on his plan for his long-term success with the San Jose Sharks. And, of course, take a look at the Sharks' future outlook of what they'll possibly do at the deadline. They're expected to be sellers at the deadline, which, of course, the trade deadline will be on March 7th. And potential trade candidates for the Sharks could see Mikael Granlund leave the Sharks. Of course, he leads the team, I believe, in goals and points. Oh, I could be wrong on that. I think he leads them in points for sure. I don't know about goals. But he's been linked to some teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the Toronto Maple Leafs could be one of those teams to get Mikael Granlund come trade deadline. Of course, he's going to bring that veteran presence for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Of course, they already have a great veteran in John Tavares, but Mikael Granlund will be another one. And Nico Sturm, we could possibly see him get moved before the deadline, or maybe after the deadline. He's set to become a unrestricted. Well, actually, no, it won't be after the deadline. It will probably be somewhere like before the deadline, or maybe after the season. He'll probably sign with another team because he'll be a unrestricted free agent. And another player we could see on the move is Mario Ferraro. Try saying that name. Try saying that 5 times. And as a reliable defenseman, we could see interest from other teams in Mario Ferraro to bolster their blue line. So we could see Mario Ferraro possibly go to a playoff contender team, or a team that's trying to, build on their defense and trying to be a good asset for their rebuild. And you should take a look at the Sharks next few games heading up to Four Nations. They'll be at home today, take on the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then on Thursday, they'll head to Seattle, take on the Seattle Kraken. That will air on ESPN. And then next Tuesday, they'll be at home to take on the Montreal Canadiens. And then next Thursday, they take on the Vancouver Canucks. And then next Saturday, they take on the Dallas Stars. So those will be the games heading up until Four Nations. So still a lot of time for the Sharks team to make a few moves. We could probably see some other moves that the Sharks make before the deadline or after deadline. We'll just have to see what General Manager Mike Greer does. But obviously, it has been a struggle for San Jose. And they're trying to look to get out of this hump and start winning at least a few games. Probably could go on somewhat of a 3-4 game winning streak just to give you guys momentum. But I know you guys are not going to be a playoff team, but it would be nice to see a little winning streak. All right, NHL games on the slate for today. So it's only 5 games on the slate. Got the LA Kings taking on Detroit Red Wings at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will air on NHL Network. And then we got the New Jersey Devils taking on the Philadelphia Flyers at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And then we got the Vancouver Canucks taking on the St. Louis Blues at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And then we got the Seattle Kraken taking on the Edmonton Oilers at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. And then we got the Pittsburgh Penguins taking on the San Jose Sharks to wrap up the 5-game slate at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for this episode of Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, make sure you leave a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And don't forget to subscribe to the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast YouTube channel. We're with you guys every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time. Remember that Central Time. You don't want to get the time zones mixed up. And, of course, leave a comment down below. I would always like to hear from you guys, whether you agree or disagree with any hockey discussions I bring up. I always like to hear from you, whether you agree or disagree with me. And hope you guys have a great rest of your day. God first, as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys Wednesday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Take care.